What is up, guys? It's Blue Spooky here, as always. It's time for another Q&A video. Like I said, I'm going to start trying to do these monthly as long as I keep getting more questions that people want to know about me. I also figured since we just passed 75,000 subscribers, right about now would be probably a good time to do it, since we've got a lot of new people here, and there are probably a lot of people that want to know some things about me. So I've gone through some of the questions that people have left on the new video, and also some of the older questions that I didn't get to answer in the last Q&A. And I've grabbed some of the ones I thought were the most interesting, and we're just going to go ahead, sit down, and answer some of them for you all. If you don't particularly enjoy listening to my voice, or you don't enjoy just listening to someone talk about themselves for about 30 minutes, then this might not be the video for you. But without further ado, let's get started and let's answer some of these questions. The first question that I'm going to answer today is, what do you like about being a YouTuber, and is it fun? I think the thing I love most about being a YouTuber is that I kind of get to decide my own schedule. Like, I can make the videos at any time that I want. Like, if I really feel like I want to make a video one day, then I can go ahead and make a video that day, and I can put it out at pretty much any time. I also get to meet a lot of very cool people doing YouTube, both fans and other creators. I've made a lot of really cool friendships so far, and it's just been a really fun time overall. So yeah, I guess I would say that it is pretty fun. The next question I'm going to answer is, have you ever written any of your own scary stories, and do you have any scary stories of your own that you're going to share on the channel one day? Yes, I actually have written scary stories. Back when I was in high school, I actually used to be really big into the creepypasta community. And basically, every chance I got on the weekend and stuff, I would just write a bunch of scary story ideas and creepypastas. None of them were particularly good, I'd say, but it was just a way for me to get some of my ideas out there and try to be a little bit creative. My senior project for high school actually was I wrote a little book of 10 creepypastas, and I actually published it on a self-publishing website. So yeah, I have written quite a few scary stories of my own actually. I also do have some personal scary stories that I'd like to share on the channel one day, but it just takes a while to recall all the details of what happened because a lot of them were quite a long time ago. And also I have to work on writing them down and making them sound interesting. Because I want the video where I share personal stories to be like a special thing, I don't want it to be a video where I'm just like, oh yeah, and one time at a gas station this guy did this thing and bad stuff happened in the end. So yeah, I will be doing some personal scary stories on the channel someday soon. The next question I'm going to answer is, do you believe that every story you read is 100% true? And how long does it usually take you to find the stories? Or / how long does it take you to make a video? I'd say that yeah, I believe that most of them are mostly true. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt and believe in like the good of people, and I don't see why somebody would necessarily lie about stories like these sometimes. And most of the time, it is stuff that is fairly believable, like that stuff could have actually happened. So I tend to give the stories the benefit of the doubt. That said, I do come across some stories sometimes that I read them, and I kind of scratch my head a little bit, and I'm like, I'm not sure if this is true, that sounds a little bit shady. And if I ever come across a story like that, or stories that I know have factual errors that make them sound incorrect or something like that, then I usually won't read those stories in a True Scary Story video, because obviously, you know, I don't know if they're true or not. For most of the true paranormal stories I do, the reason those ones take me a little bit longer is because when I read the paranormal stories, like, I do believe in some paranormal stuff like ghosts and stuff like that, but when I read some of those stories, I just have to practice a healthy dose of skepticism. So that's why it takes me a little bit longer to come out with paranormal stories, because a lot of the time I'm just not sure if I believe if they're true or not, so I have to do a little bit more research about them. Now, when I'm looking for stories to read for the day, I usually spend a few hours looking for stories. I also spend a couple of hours looking through other narrators' channels just to make sure, as far as I can, that they haven't been read before. Of course, sometimes things slip through the cracks, and I do accidentally read something that has been read by another narrator. But for the process of making a video, it's usually about 3 hours to find stories, another couple of hours to do research, about an hour or two to record, and then the rest is editing. And then I get it out to you guys at night as soon as I can. The next question is, do you ever get scared by any of the stories that you read? Or is there a story that has been particularly haunting to you? To be honest, I've read hundreds of these stories by now, and I'm a little bit desensitized to it. When I first started narrating, I used to actually get scared by them sometimes because I basically record in the upstairs of my house alone, and I would always record them at about 7 o'clock at night because that's when I didn't have school and I had the time, and that's why all of my videos used to come out at like 11 p.m. because it just took that long to upload them. But yeah, I did get scared at first. Nowadays, not so much because I've just read so many of them. But occasionally there are stories that do haunt me, especially anything that has to involve like domestic abuse or little kids being harmed or terrified in some way. Sometimes for those ones I kind of have to take it one story at a time, and if it's particularly intense, sometimes I'll have to like sit back and take a deep breath. I know in the last stalker story I did, the last story in that video actually kind of got to me. And I had to turn off the recording session for a little bit and just kind of sit there and think and try to calm down because it just kind of like, it got to me, it kind of upset me. So there are stories that I have like that sometimes. The next question I'm going to answer is a personal one, and that question is, you said you were going to college, what is your major? Basically, my major in college is forensic biology. I've always been a really big science guy. I was always just reading books about science. I mean, people like Stephen Hawking and Neil deGrasse Tyson were some of my heroes growing up. So I've always been really big into science. In high school specifically, we had this program where you could basically go into a science-oriented field of study. So I chose that, and it focused really heavily on biology. Like there was a lot of physics and chemistry and molecular biology, microbiology that went on when I was in high school. And so when I went to college, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, but I was sure that I wanted to do something that involved science, and I knew that I probably wanted it to involve biology or chemistry. And I've always loved like those old ID shows and stuff like that. Like I really love the thought process behind it, and I really enjoy that you get to help people with science in that sort of way. So I decided that that's what I wanted to focus my school career on doing. And at this point, it's honestly going pretty well. I enjoy this field, and I think it's the one that I really want to go into. So yeah, my major in college is forensic biology. The next question is a bit of a funny one that I'm going to answer, and that's, what is the stupidest thing you have seen people do in public? Now, I live in a pretty serene place. It doesn't really ever get too crazy or anything like that around here, but I have seen a few dumb things. I think the stupidest thing I've ever seen is, so basically I live in a weird area where it's kind of suburban, but there's also a lot of fields and stuff around. So it's kind of a weird mix. And in the street going through the neighborhood, there are a bunch of speed bumps because there's a school nearby and they don't want people going too fast. So eventually one day, me and my family were outside. I don't remember what we were doing exactly, but we were just talking, and we were standing there on the sidewalk, and this guy comes blowing by in this really nice car going super fast. I think he was going like maybe 50 miles an hour, and he hits the 25-mile-an-hour speed bump going that fast, and his car like bumped into the air and hit the ground, and he broke the axle on his wheel, and he basically kind of skidded and came to a stop, and his car was smoking. Like, the guy was alright, like, he didn't get hurt, and nobody got hurt really from it, but it was just kind of like, well, that was strange, because we just watched this guy essentially come around the corner and break his car on a speed bump, and then he got out and he was really frustrated, and he started like kicking the speed bump and getting kind of angry. So we gave him some water and a snack, and he kind of calmed down, and we helped him call his auto insurance. But it was just a really strange experience that happened right nearby my house. Thinking of another pretty stupid thing I saw. One time I saw these two teenage girls, and they were basically just walking down the street with their phones out, like in the opposite direction of traffic, not even paying attention where they were going. And they just kind of were walking and meandering about in the middle of the street. And there were a bunch of people like telling them to stop, but they just kept doing it anyway. So I'm not really sure what that's about, but it's just a humorous little story of something that I saw one time. Next question I'm going to answer. Did you play any sports in high school? And what was your dream job before YouTube? So, no, I've not really ever been a really big sports guy. Like, I'm not into football or anything like that. The only sport I usually watch is UFC because my family is really into that sort of thing. But when I was in elementary school, middle school, and for a little bit of high school, I actually was kind of into basketball. Like, not into professional basketball or anything, but I did like to play basketball a lot on like the school grounds and stuff. Like, all of my recesses were spent playing basketball. And I kind of thought about joining the basketball team, but I decided that I probably really wasn't cut out for it, especially since I'm kind of a little bit short for a guy. And I decided to just focus on all of the academic stuff. So that turned out well. What was my dream job before YouTube? First off, yes, for right now, YouTube is my job and my source of income for school and stuff like that. But I've had a lot of dream jobs throughout my life. I know that the biggest one, though, was when I was little, I wanted to be a paleontologist for the longest time because I was really, really into dinosaurs. Like, me and my best friend at the time, we would just get together and we would always talk about, oh, hey, this dinosaur is the coolest. And we knew all these really weird facts about dinosaurs. And I know people used to get really annoyed because in elementary school I would just randomly spout facts about dinosaurs that I liked. But yeah, at one point I did want to be a paleontologist. As I got a little bit older and I started going into high school, that's when I started getting in more to the Stephen Hawking, Neil deGrasse Tyson type of stuff. And I really, really was interested in space. Just like how much we don't know about it, how much there is to explore. Something about that really just enticed me. So I thought that I might want to be like an astronaut or an astronomer or something like that. But it just kind of never really panned out. After that, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and I was a little bit into college already at the time. And basically, I met with my counselor, and we talked things out a bit, and that's when I decided I wanted to do a job having to do with forensic biology for a living, and that's why I chose my major in college. Next question I'm going to answer. Would you rather be in a high-production movie with a few lines, or in a low-production movie as the starring role? Now that is an interesting question, and I think the way that you answer it says a lot about you. For me personally, the production value is not really the part that I would be most focused on. What would be most important to me was if I thought that I would be proud of the work I did in that particular sense. Because there are a lot of variables there, like you can have some really impactful roles with just a few lines. And likewise, not all low-production venues are terrible. So it's really just a matter of, would I be proud of the work that I'm putting out there, and would I actually want people to see me doing this? And that's probably how I would decide how I would choose to go with either one of those things. I'd probably say, though, that I might be more inclined to go with the high production movie with a few lines, just because I'm not really sure how well I would do in a starring role in anything. And I really wouldn't want to force people to sit through that. So that's basically my manner of thinking on it. We're just going to answer a few more questions here because the video is already starting to get a little bit long. The next one I'm going to answer is, Blue Spooky, have you looked at people different after starting your channel? I haven't really looked at people too differently. There are a few people that I have looked at differently because I know how some of the behind the scenes stuff works now. So some people, I have looked at how they do things, and it has made me look at them a little bit differently now that I know what's going on behind the scenes. It's also made me have a lot of respect for some of the YouTubers who have other obligations like school or jobs and stuff like that. It just really makes me respect the work that they're putting into their channel. I know as well that a lot of people have seen me differently after I started my channel. Specifically, I do get asked a lot now, like, oh, can you help me with this aspect of my channel? Do you have any advice for people who are starting out? Or if people know that I do the channel in real life, sometimes they will ask me for advice on YouTube or video audio advice. And I'm not really the best person for that, but I guess since I'm doing this whole YouTube thing now, sometimes people just kind of assume that I know what I'm doing about everything and that I can transfer that wisdom onto them somehow. And that's not necessarily the case a lot of the time. Next question I'm going to answer. Have you ever read a story too creepy and then decided not to upload it? I've never really read a story too creepy per se, but I know that I have gotten some viewer submissions where I read them and I kind of had to message the person back and be like, are you sure that you're okay sharing this with me? Because this seems really personal and really intense and I don't want you to be uncomfortable. And most of the people that I asked to said, yes, they are comfortable sharing it, especially if it can help people. So I do have a couple of those stories saved up that are just really intense. And usually before I read any of those stories like that, I kind of have to mentally prepare myself a little bit because I do have a lot of empathy for people and I can be a little emotional sometimes. So if a story is really, really personal and intense, sometimes it can really get to me and it can take me a long time to record those types of stories. So yeah, sometimes I do get stories that I decide maybe now is not the best time to record it. Maybe I should mentally prepare myself to do this. The next question I'm going to be answering is, what is the worst injury that you've ever received? Now, I've received a few bad injuries in my life. I've had times where I've broken my wrist, and I had another time where I hurt both of my legs really bad and I had to sit in a wheelchair for about, I'd say probably a week or two. But I think the worst injury that I've ever had was when I was in elementary school, and it actually happened during recess one time. I was basically playing basketball with some of my friends, and we have one of those really slippery dirt gravel tracks where you run the mile right next to the basketball court. So we were basically playing basketball, and the basketball court is really close to the track. And so I went to go jump up to make a shot or something, and this kid who was running on the track, I guess, kind of slipped, and he crashed into me and hit me really hard, and I hit my ankle against the cement curb, and I basically broke a little bit of my ankle. And I had to kind of sit down, and I was crying. My best friend came over, and he's like, "Oh, what's wrong?" I told him I thought I broke my leg, and he said, "If you broke your leg, you'd be crying." And I told him, "I am crying, you idiot." And basically, I had to go home, and we took my shoe off, and my ankle was super swollen. Had to go to the doctor to confirm that my ankle was actually broken, and we got some x-rays. That took a while. They gave me some crutches, but they told me that I could just use them as like a support to walk. So we did that for like 1.5 miles to the next doctor's office I had to go to. And when we got to that doctor's office, they said, "What are you doing? You're supposed to be using those to keep the pressure off of your leg." And I just kind of felt really stupid at that point, but basically I had to wear this big padded boot where you could change the air pressure so that it was tight against your ankle. And I had to wear that for a couple of months, and I couldn't really do anything. It was super annoying because I just had to hobble about everywhere on the crutches. And so that's probably the worst injury I've ever had in my entire life so far. I've also had times where I've like tripped and hit my head against the sharp corner of a wall and stuff like that, but that stuff is usually temporary and not too bad. The last question I'm going to answer is, what is your favorite book? Now, I don't know if I really have a particular favorite book. I do really like to read, even though I don't really get the chance that often anymore. But I do know that I really enjoy fantasy, and I really enjoy sci-fi series. When I was little, I was super into like Harry Potter, Goosebumps, Deltora Quest, that kind of stuff. I think Deltora Quest was actually my favorite when I was a younger kid. But now that I'm older and I can read more mature stuff, I don't know if people know what this is, but I really like books in the Bolo series. I really enjoy those and the sci-fi aspect of those. I also enjoy reading non-fiction books about history a lot because I like to learn about that sort of thing. I'm like a huge nerd though, so I'd have to say that my favorite book that I own is probably my Encyclopedia of Dinosaurs. I know that probably sounds like really silly, but it carries a lot of sentimental memories for me. And I just like to go back through it and read it every now and then. Even though it's pretty out of date at this point since I got it like 6 years ago, I just like to look back at it and remember some of the old dinosaur facts I used to know. And also to remember some of the times I spent with my friends talking about that sort of thing. So that's why that book is the favorite that I own. And so for now, the Q&A is done. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me ramble on for about 22 minutes or so. If you did enjoy the video, please feel free to leave comments below giving some feedback, or perhaps leave a question for the next Q&A in the comments below if you have something that you'd like to know about me in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.